I often compare GTD to enlightenment. I do that because for this very example that you gave, just it takes a one man in the room, one enlightened man in the room to make the whole room enlightened or the world enlightened, as we have seen from great personalities in the past. It takes one GTD champion in the organization, and everybody around them just has to get GTD, and they start upping their game. In fact, many of the calls and requests that we receive in our organization, and I'm sure it's a reflection of the material that you're teaching and what you've gone through as well, it's often the most senior people in the organizations call us, RF, I know GTD, I get GTD, I need GTD in my company, please get down here.
Yeah. Well, once you taste it, you start to realize how much help it will be for everybody around you,
Sure.
and how much it makes life easier for you if people around you are focused and in control.
You mentioned that once companies and individuals or teams start getting the concept of a project, and that really helps them up their game. What is a project in GTD terms?
Well, in our terms, a project is basically any kind of an outcome that you're attempting to achieve that you can't finish with one action step. In other words, and that you can finish within a few weeks or months in some shorter period of time than maybe a big goal. But the project, the reason we call it that is because you can't actually do a project. You can only do action steps about that. But if you have some outcome, like I need tires on my car, or I need to get my kids into the next level of school for the next school year, or I've got this holiday coming up that I need to arrange and plan, or I'm going to buy a company, or I need to hire an assistant. Those kinds of things, if you can't finish them in one sitting or in one step, you need to keep some sort of a reminder about that end game. Because if you don't, you might finish one step on it, then be distracted or have to go do something else before that thing is finished. Now, guess what? If you don't have a placeholder for that project or that outcome somewhere, guess where it is? It's following you along in your head. Right? And now you're starting to accumulate residue. People often misinterpret that what we're doing is spending a lot of time on not necessarily the most critical things. But the truth is, if you don't handle things like tires on your car and the kids in the school or whatever, then you start to actually give them more attention than they deserve. So the way to get free of them, you have to, as we say, the way out is through. It's an old Gestalt theorem. You don't get rid of it by trying to ignore it and hope it goes away. You get rid of it by jumping right into it and go, what is that? What am I committed to finish about that? Let me capture what that is, and then ensure that you loop back around and see that and be reminded of that in some appropriate way. That lets your mind go, even though that's not finished, it's not pulling on me because I've now made the appropriate decisions about it, parked the results in an appropriate place. That's how you get a clear head.
Absolutely.
Talking about having a clear head and about using GTD in organizations, you've had this concept of mind like water, and it sounds very Zen when we talk about mind like water. Why is it important for organizations or the people within an organization to have a mind like water?
Well, the analogy or the metaphor really is about being appropriately involved with your universe. Water is not confused about how to engage and how to behave. It behaves very appropriately based upon whether it's a waterfall or a rain shower or a still pond. And so the idea is just being able to be clear and not distracted, so you're not overreacting or underreacting. Most people take one meeting into the next emotionally. Most people take work to home and home to work psychologically, as opposed to that's there, that's complete, that's finished, now let me deal with this, instead of having that go with them. So the idea of being clear and being appropriately engaged with whatever you're dealing with. Oh, come on, you guys must know in your own company, in any 15-minute segment of your day, you're going to have to deal with this and then this thing up here and then this thing here and then you've got this phone call and then, I've got to pick this up when I go home. I mean, and that's just one tiny little micro window into your world, how many things that you need to see. Most people are letting that overwhelm them as opposed to appropriate to that, appropriate to that, appropriate to that. So much like a martial artist can fight 4 people at once, but they don't fight 4 people at once. It's just one at a time. Very quick refocusing. So the ability to be able to rapidly refocus at the appropriate horizon with the appropriate energy for what it deserves, that's mind like water. I can imagine if an organization did that, it's huge.
Yeah. So, would you say that following GTD helps you to manage your emotions so that you are not, say, withdrawing emotionally or overreacting emotionally when you're in a situation?
Well, I think people's emotions get affected tremendously when they're feeling overwhelmed and feeling out of control. And that everything sort of magnifies in the negative when that happens.
Yeah.
And so, though GTD doesn't address emotions directly, what it does is address your ability to feel like things are under control, and how much better then people feel when they're appropriately engaged and when things are under control. Has a huge. Now I kind of make it a little bit of a joke about it. I say you don't have to like your life to get it off your mind. So this is not about happy, whatever. I mean, come on, life is challenging. If it wasn't, you'd never grow and expand and express yourself. So you don't want to, this doesn't eliminate challenges. And so it's not going to eliminate the stresses of life oftentimes that those kind of challenges bring by their very nature. But what it does is it gives you a much more firm footing and becomes much easier to then approach those things with an appropriate equilibrium. So that you can then deal with it, as opposed to over or underreacting or going numb, which a lot of people have done.
Yeah. It reminds me of a quote from Susan Jeffers' book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, where she says that man's greatest fear is the fear of being out of control.
Mm-hmm.
So, would you say that the 5 steps to GTD, the 5 steps to getting under control, is a step towards becoming fearless?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't know that you ever become fearless, but what it does is it allows you to take on bigger challenges for the same amount of fear. Right? I mean, stepping out of your comfort zone and moving into unfamiliar territory is always going to throw you into a sense of not necessarily anxiety, because it can be a positive kind of dissonance, but it will throw you into a dissonant state. So you're not going to get rid of that. But the more you have things under control, the bigger things you will throw yourself into for the same amount of risk.
Right. Excellent. I have to ask this question. So one of the things that really attracted me to GTD, or one of the really aha moments, is when I realized that GTD is not just about getting things done. It's about appropriate engagement, so that whenever you're working on something, you can give your best to it, and you can be completely present. And when I think about it, it almost sounds like a teaching from Eckhart Tolle in Power of Now, when he says that, be completely in the present. And it's almost like GTD helps you to be more spiritual, because it helps you to put your attention in the present. Do you feel that way, that GTD helps any of its practitioners become more spiritual?
Well, it depends what you mean by spiritual. I'd say if you use a small S on that, and say sure. It means, because a lot of that is just how do you manage your attention.
Yeah.
A lot of spiritual practices have a lot to do with clear observation and about managing your attention. And so but believe me, the martial arts is about managing your attention. Military is about managing your attention. Situational awareness is a huge concept in the military. So that some part of you can appropriately, those are good guys, those are not good guys. You need to be able to make that decision fast.
Yeah.
So being able to be clear about that. Now, if you want to call that spiritual, most people might not think that would necessarily be a spiritual thing. If you are on a spiritual path or track, then this certainly allows you to have more space to be able to do that really well. Now, a lot of people think, I need to suffer and be overwhelmed so that I can then, realize that it is not of this earth and there is another spiritual reality, which, by the way, is my experience and that's my own belief system and the field within which I operate. But that's the ability to be able to then access that without having to suffer, without having to give up this level, was something that I was interested in. How can I be in this world but not of it? Because a lot of people say, spiritual, okay, rice bowl and cave, And no, because there's a whole lot of distraction that can happen in the world that can pull you away and pull your attention down into materiality, as opposed to the more subtle sounds and things that are going on in the universe. But the universe is always on, by the way. It's always, the universe doesn't meditate. It's always on, right? All we do when we get quiet or reflective or meditative is we just turn off certain noises so that we can hear other sounds. That's really all you're doing. You're still highly engaged, even though you may have your eyes closed and be very quiet. You know, sometimes that is when I'm most engaged, is when I'm in those circumstances. So to make it clearer so that, yes, you can practice not being distracted with having a lot of distractions in your life, but Frank, I'm too lazy. It's like, why do I even need to deal with that? Let me just handle the distraction so that when I sit there, I'm not thinking, gee, we need dog food. Gee, we need dog food. And trying to, gee, we really need dog food. Handle the dog food thing, you know? So that's why, you know, even when I meditate, I keep pen and paper very close by. Because as you start to relax and let the onion sort of unpeel, you know, who knows what, you know, emerges, you know, that's nice to get out of the way so that you can keep going.